right. Good morning, everybody. We've got about 32 folks, so we can go ahead and start. Just as a reminder, I am recording this meeting, and I do post them on the Public Utility Law Judges YouTube channel after they've been completed. So if anyone wants to go back and check them out, you just have to go to the Commission's website and find the page. Couple things to hit today. We do have some folks with some limited windows. AEG is only here from 10 to 11:30, so why don't we kick off things with them? Taylor or Jessica or whoever wants to kick things off on AEG side, assuming they're here.
Good morning. Sure. AG needs no introduction. We've heard from them before. Okay. But I think this is an opportunity to have a discussion or answer some questions raised by Joe Loper to our AEG team. So we have Eli, Morris, and I believe Neil is here. I don't know if I saw him. I see you, Eli. Is Neil joining us?
I don't think so. I think it's going to be me and then Ryan Ledick from the Brattle Group.
Perfect. Okay. And I do see Ryan. Okay. I open the floor up to you guys.
All right. Thank you, Taylor. Morning, Eli. Hope you're doing well. All right. The floor is... Oh, Eli, do you have anything, any updates or anything like that, sir?
Yes. Thanks,
okay.
Judge. I did want to give an update. And I know that the point here was to be able to answer questions, and especially those for Joe. We actually worked with Joe a little bit earlier this week, and through that process, he did identify a couple issues we needed to correct in the numbers. So that's the first thing I wanted to inform the group, is that we have made some corrections to the analysis. There were some minor corrections, like we updated the air conditioning standard, made sure that was correct. That had a small impact on the potential. The larger impact was Joe noted that we had unintentionally omitted the air emissions benefits from the cost effectiveness calculations. And I'm sure, as this group knows, since you developed the new values, those are pretty significant. So we have been working feverishly over the last couple of days to update all the analyses, rerun all the models. We do have updated numbers. I can show them at a high level here, and then we'll also work with the PHI team to get the updated slides and reporting workbook accessible to this group. So apologies for another update here. I know that everyone's working on comments to the commission on the targets. So sorry for a late change, but this was definitely something we wanted to make to correct the analysis. And I can show you, I'll just show at a high level here. Let me pull up just a comparison file here, just so you can see. The update didn't really have much of an impact on the technical potential. There was that update for the standard. And then we did note that just when we were rerunning the models for the December update, there was a glitch in the DPL electrification. So that's been corrected also. So very small change in the technical potential, but we are seeing, as we would expect from including these new benefits, or new to our analysis, benefits that should have been in there the whole time, we are seeing an increase in the economic and achievable potential. So you can see that in these graphs. This graph up above is the annual life cycle GHG impacts by year for each of the scenarios. These are statewide. So you can see where it was before for economic potential and how it's increased. And this is all utilities, all fuels combined. Less of an impact on the business as usual, which only includes energy efficiency. More of an impact on these that also include electrification. So apologies again for another update, but definitely something we felt was important to really push through quickly to get the right numbers, and then to get the information back to this group and to the stakeholders who've been involved in the abatement study quickly. So I'll stop there and open it up for any questions on either on this update or just the questions we were planning to address on this call anyway.
All right. Thank you, sir. And just Dylan posted something in the comments. Appreciates the improvements in accuracy. He's emphasizing that comments are due not to the work group, but to the commission on the 30th of December, which means it's obviously much sooner given the holidays. Is it possible to get the update today or tomorrow?
Yes, so that's our plan. The analysis, the slides are all updated. I think we'll work with PHI on the right process, or you can let me know, Judge, the right way to get it out to this work group. I thought we would send it to PHI. We did previously. We have a share folder. The workbook is rather large, so we can send the link to PHI. They can send it to you. You can circulate it if that's the right protocol.
Yeah, PHI, please go ahead and give it to Taylor or Jessica, and they can circulate it to the group.
Okay.
All right, thank you, sir. Tunde.
Thank you, Your Honor. This is Tunde from MEA. Eli, has this been updated on the shared folders?
Not yet, but we will do that today, and then we'll get the link out.
All right.
Dr. Kowalju.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Hello, Eli. Have you actually made any changes to the limited income potential?
We have not. We didn't make any specific. I mean, these updates affected all sectors, all segments.
Yeah.
So these but we didn't make any specific updates to the limited income segment.
If I recall correctly, you may have used the 200% federal poverty.
Yes.
Does anybody on the call think we should be using the 250 to determine the potential? And maybe it's a moot point anyway, because the size of the problem, whether it's 200 federal poverty or 250, is so huge that it doesn't really matter if we're setting goals. But I bring it up anyway.
Well, I can jump in. I was I don't want to say confused, but yeah, and I know, Eli, you weren't around here for the work group initially, but yeah, again, those meetings are out there. If you have absolutely nothing to do over the holidays, you could watch those. I'm being completely sarcastic, but we had used the 250% of the federal poverty level, and I know DHCD used, I think they used 200%, used 200%. Is there a big reason why you use 200 versus 250, and is it more than just kind of changing a 0 to a 5 and hitting enter to change those figures, sir?
Yeah, so we used the 200. That was the direction we were given by the stakeholder group we were working with. I understand, I don't know the timing of it, but DHCD did update their requirements from 200 to 250%. We were talking with Scott and with Jackie Berger earlier this week about the low income analysis, and that was noted. So that's why we use 200%, is because that's what was agreed upon with the stakeholder group we were working with on this study. It is a pretty big change for us to do that, because it takes us back to one of the very first step of the analysis, which is segmenting the customers and the consumption in the base year across those segments. And then that all flows through to the potential. We have to recalibrate all the models. So that would be a very large update at this point.
All right, thank you, sir. Scott, did you want to jump in there, sir?
I guess the only thing that I would add was, I don't remember how 200% was settled on. The 250% was, I think it was definitely in play for this whole cycle, and it may have come into play towards the end of the last cycle, but it's been at least this whole cycle. So I'm not sure why the 200%, but that said, Cadmus did do a study at 200%. I'm sorry, 250%, and Jackie did her analysis, and so I guess the work group probably needs to consider that 200% would be the minimum and 250% would be the maximum, and that we probably fall somewhere in between there.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else want to talk about 200 versus 250 or any questions in general for Eli?
I'm sorry, Your Honor. I do have one other
Oh,
quick
please.
question
No,
for Eli.
go ahead, sir.
So Eli, also on, there was no differentiation in the potential per household between low income and non-low income. Is that accurate?
Not sure I mean, everything is by those segments.
Measure. Yeah. So it's built bottom up. Yeah.
It is bottom up. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
The workbook, you'll see there are hundreds of thousands of measure level rows. You can summarize it. I mean, I showed some of the summaries a couple of weeks ago, how we summarized it by building type, but all the measure level details in there also.
Yeah. And I appreciate that. And I know that's the way it's normally done. I just want to bring up the fact that, obviously with low income programs, the baseline really is not standard practice, but existing conditions.
Mm-hmm.
So it is possible that your per household value is understated. We should just recognize that as a possibility, and I'm not suggesting we do anything about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, like, for example, all of our equipment measures we're looking at them at the time of replacement. So if you were to look at early replacement of that equipment for energy savings, health and safety, whatever it might be, that would be a different savings, for example.
All right. Thank you, Doc. Joe.
Eli, or well, I guess it's for the work group. So these numbers, I assume, Eli, those are including the lighting and the electrification in the numbers you just showed us. Is that
correct? These are
okay?
Still the same as before. This is apples to apples with what we've done before.
Yeah, and so where the big impacts are going to be happening is on the energy efficiency side from the change in the emissions benefit. Wait, before I go to that, when you said you added the emissions benefit, but it was unclear to me that the other non-energy benefits were in that avoided cost. Did you add those?
Those were already in there. They're just much smaller. So those are mostly those adders, or the percentage adders.
Okay.
So the way we had to do it in our model, we had to roll them all into the avoided cost, even though they're non-energy benefits. But that's the way it flowed through our model. Is we built them. Yeah.
So I would greatly appreciate the ability to see where that's all being added in, including those non-energy benefits and the air emissions benefit. And so if y'all could put that on your to-do list for pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So lighting and electrification, I know lighting is, I think lighting's coming out, possibly some other stuff. That's what we were going to go recalculate, but you have calculated without lighting, I think, in some of your tables previously, and also distinguish between electrification. And so do you have those numbers handy to show how much those changed?
Not sure why it's not letting me share that document again, but that did differentiate by, let me see.
I would expect that to be much bigger delta between the old and new for once you take out the electrification. But
well, so this you can see the red is the electrification. So if you want to see what happens without the electrification, you can look at the top of the green, which is the electric, or the blue, which is the natural gas. So that's the first part on electrification. And then we haven't removed lighting from any of the current or previous summaries. We did show in that slide the impact of the lighting baseline, but all of them have included lighting.
yeah, so I would expect the adding the air emissions benefit, unless I'm thinking wrong, would more than double the avoided cost from what you had. Is that?
Yeah, that's in the order of magnitude.
Yeah. And it's not, I understand that it would be less or more, it wouldn't be proportional in terms of these scenarios, but I am surprised that it's not moving them more.
Well, so you can see, let's just look at the green before, maybe 2/3 of the technical energy efficiency was already cost effective. So there's only so much headroom, and now almost all of it's cost effective.
I see.
And then it had less of an impact on energy efficiency or on electrification because it was excluded from both fuels. So you're getting the air emissions benefit of reducing the natural gas, but now you have additional air emissions costs from the electric side, even though that net is probably a positive reduction on the electric side. So that's why I think it had less of an impact on electrification. But on energy efficiency, yeah, it did increase, but because a lot of it was already cost effective, it's not like, doubling the avoided cost isn't going to double the economic potential.
I see. So on the electric, it looked like, just getting an order of magnitude, looked like it increased it a third or something, or
something like that.
We were at 28. Ideally, if I can see these calculations, then I wouldn't have to just kind of be eyeballing stuff. And
this is just the summary graph we created here. The tables are all in the workbook with the actual values.
With the but these calculations were not in the workbook. These actual these avoided cost emissions benefits. So
the avoided costs.
But we will be able to see those before you go final, hopefully in today or tomorrow, right?
Yes, you just have to figure out the right way to do that, because it is it's separated by utility, by sector, by end use, at that level. But we can show you some examples of how that's done.
Gotcha. Okay, and so it looked like it was about a 50% increase in the efficiency economic potential, and so we still got some on the table. Okay, so my next question, thank you. So my next question is part of the reason that we're digging in on this is just trying to be able to replicate enough where we can go make adjustments. So that would be the lighting, electrification, depending on what the work group wants to do, but also this portfolio level cost effectiveness versus the measure level. And so I'm just trying to anticipate whether that's, how meaningful that change is going to be. We don't have much headroom here. And so, but the portfolio could take it up to the technical potential. I would think. I already actually was expecting the economic potential to be equal to the technical potential today, but there's a little more headroom. And so I'm just kind of, I guess I'm kind of trying to tease this out, because we got a very short timeline here, and how to expedite this where people have an idea what's going on. I would almost be, if this was the information we had and this was all we could do, time's up, I would almost recommend that the potential be looking at the technical potential at this point, because there is going to be some increase associated with that portfolio level cost effectiveness, right?
Yeah, just keep in mind that the technical potential assumes you're getting everyone to do everything. So these achievable potentials are where we're factoring in the actual assumed customer uptake.
Yeah, and so the economic potential, though, I'm saying the economic potential would be up to the technical potential, and then you got to figure out how much you can do. Yeah, understood. Yeah. But I think in the last work group meeting, Dylan, people should correct me here. I was thinking the main interest was on the economic and achievable potential. And can you describe the achievable, the max achievable? Can you describe to the work group, Eli, how the achievable potential max is developed from the economic potential, what those inputs are and how that gets triggered?
Sure. So the difference between the economic and the achievable is now we're assuming what rate customers might actually adopt these technologies. The economic assumes everyone does everything. When their equipment needs to be replaced, they're putting in the highest efficient unit that's economic. The achievable is adjusting that to reflect what might actually happen in the market. And that's largely based on survey research we've done, including on the last Empower baseline study, at what customers said they would do. We've also checked that against the historical program accomplishments. The maximum, and we're currently working on the cost benefit analysis that was requested from us. That's been delayed a little bit because we had to make these updates, but that's where we're going to see that you're getting higher savings, you're getting it at higher cost, and we are assuming that you would pay up to 100% of the incremental cost of the measure in that maximum case. So this is a much higher spending level. You're really trying to do everything you can to try to get as many customers as possible to adopt these measures. And the research and experience has shown that even if you're paying for the full cost, even if you were to go and door-to-door and direct install these measures, you're not going to get every measure installed. Some customers just won't want to participate, and that's that difference between economic and maximum achievable. And then in the business as usual, that's more of an assumption of current incentive levels. And well, the biggest difference probably is that we've taken electrification and demand response out, but that's more of a what might you get at current incentive levels, and considering that things are not perfect in the market, not everything's going to go perfectly in terms of customer uptake and communication and things like that, and there are additional barriers. So that's that difference between maximum achievable and business as usual achievable.
Yep, I'll let Garrett.
Garrett,
Thanks.
Go ahead, sir. I'm sorry.
Thanks, Joe. And thanks, Judge. Yeah. So can you just say just a little bit more, Eli, on that point? So I get the difference between sort of the philosophical difference between the business as usual and the max achievable. Just how maxed are we at max, I guess, is the question, right? You said this would cost significantly more. What can you give us? I don't think I've seen in the report that we got, and I might have missed it, just how much more would this cost, and how did you decide what that sort of reasonable yet still maximum rate of participation might be here?
Yeah, so I don't have the numbers in front of me, but generally in these studies, when we're thinking about maximum, we're assuming that over the longer period, you could get something like 85%, and that varies by technology. Different technologies have different uptake. But this study being a 6-year study, of course, we're getting a smaller share of that. So we're not assuming you can get everything within these 6 years. Really, you would carry that out for 20 years and say, over a longer period, this is how much we could get. Of course, if you wanted to accelerate it, there are options to do that. You might have to pay higher costs. You might be doing early replacement of equipment, things like that. And then on the cost side, that's the analysis we're currently doing. So we haven't come up with the cost of this, other than we did work with the stakeholder group to come up with assumptions around administrative costs as a percent of incremental cost and incentives as a percent of incremental cost. But that's where we're our model doesn't natively calculate the total cost. Everything is on a measure level. So that's where we're currently trying to take that measure level data, roll it up to the higher level and say what would be indicative costs of the different cases to inform this group and the stakeholder group on just what's the relative cost and benefit difference between the scenarios.
Got it. So that's forthcoming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll just say, like, the way, and I'm here from Montgomery County, the way that we're thinking about this is, clearly getting toward the maximum achievable, ideally beyond that. I mean, we're looking at this with an eye to the new sort of goals that have come out in Climate Solutions Now, and the direction that we need to head overall as a state. And even if the Empower portfolio were to become less cost effective, say, if we need to increase surcharges to be able to deliver a more robust program that gets us to deeper savings, our assumption is that that's still a lot cheaper for our residents than whatever alternative the state might come up with otherwise. So I think it's really important for all of us to be, we're a group that's been focused on Empower, and which is a program that's worked very well for what it's done to date. I think leveraging this thing that you all have built in the form of Empower is probably a more cost-effective way to get at some of those deeper savings that we need to get to as a state than some alternative to Empower that would need to run in parallel with it. So I do think it's really useful to be able to see the kind of relative scenarios, relative cost differences we might expect, at increasing levels toward that max achievable scenario or toward that economic potential, because somewhere well north of BAU needs to happen, and understanding exactly where that kind of max potential falls between BAU and the economic potential, I think is it's very, very important. So I appreciate that you all are working on this.
To your point, Garrett, right now the assumption is that if you paid the incremental cost, that's the maximum achievable. And then what would the uptake be? There's also, that's not really the maximum. You could pay more than the incremental cost, 150% of the incremental cost or something, and presumably get a different answer.
Exactly. So
Eli, I guess we're given the timeline here. I'm concerned about us. We've been trying to dig in, and we'll do whatever calculations we need to do, but we're really short on time here. Y'all are already in the system. I'm wondering whether one, y'all could get at this portfolio thing, right, where you're just adding more measures in rather than the measures that just taking the cost effectiveness up to 1 at the sector level. Isn't that something that y'all could do rather than us replicating everything and then going back and doing it? And we've mapped all the net to gross, so we could easily provide that. That was another adjustment that we needed to make, but I was kind of thinking we would be doing all this week to try to keep up with the process, and now we're at least going into next week, and so then we're Christmas, and so I'm trying to figure out how to be most expeditious for the work. And just to refresh, so we have a portfolio level adjustment, because right now we're just measure level cost effectiveness, so it would be port level or sector level cost effectiveness. We have the net to gross, which we use in our cost effectiveness, and we'll just ignore early replacement for right now, although that's something we may want to consider. And it may be the case, Eli, it may be the case that that you don't need to go get into too much deep into, well, I don't know, even just some high level guidance to the work group that, yeah, once you do these things, you're going to get to technical, right? In which case, just use technical. And I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just saying that's possibly the case. I think Christine ran the numbers yesterday, and as of yesterday, it looked like the max potential had 56% of the technical, or no, the economic potential had, a little over half of the technical potential measures. We've just, with the GHG number, we've probably, well, I don't know how many do you know any idea how many more measures were added to the economic potential as a result of the new calcs?
I don't, and some of these would be, yes, new measures that were screened in. Some of them would be higher efficiency levels of existing measures that are now cost effective.
I see. Okay.
It will not always affect the number of measures, just the
Yep.
higher efficiency are now coming in.
I see. Okay, I got you. So that's something that we don't really have a vision of. It's just real hard for us, right? Given that you have a proprietary model that we can't really, get into. We're trying to go back out all these things to try to get to be able to do these scenarios that are applicable to the future programming work group.
Yeah, and maybe you and I should connect again, Joe, and figure out what we can do to, yes, whether it's on our side or your side, because I don't know the answer right now in terms of the best way to do it.
We'll go, Dylan, we'll give you 1 sec. Nicole just posted, does AEG know exactly when the cost numbers will be available? Is there a date that we can plan for?
So current plan is to get them out by tomorrow. We had planned to get them out yesterday. I need to check in with our team this morning and make sure that's feasible. But yeah, that's our current plan, is to get them out by the end of the week.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Dylan.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dylan Voorhees with VEIC, working with OPC. I really appreciate Joe your efforts here, your questions, your investigations, and Eli your engagement on this. I think this is all important stuff and for the better. Two comments. One sort of starting with a sort of a general comment. So, just to kind of reiterate what I was saying in the comment, less on the timeline than more the fact that the parties need to file comments on this potential study, and so we're actively trying. I'm actively working with OPC on sort of what those comments are, and I don't think there's a lot of interest in it's sort of disparaging anything about the study. There's a tremendous amount of rich data that's going to be really valuable for the commission, for goal setting. It's a fantastic resource, and there's a lot that's really great about it. I think we also need to communicate to the commission where we see the limitations of its application for this important purpose, and that will do that in a straightforward way. We'll talk about lighting and why I think setting goals should make that adjustment, and in some ways that's a little bit easier to do because we can see the lighting measures in the spreadsheet, and I can go in and sort of make that adjustment. If Joe, you're doing that too, we can compare notes, but that's a little bit more straightforward. I think this issue of putting some kind of quantification on how much of the technical potential might be available when you're bundling up to the sector level would just make it a lot easier to sort of comment to the commission about how to understand the study and how to make use of it. So I want to encourage the two of you to work on that, and I think this is what you were suggesting, Joe. Maybe some kinds of proxies, like just you don't have to necessarily do a bottom-up construction of all measures until you get to 1.0 at the sector level, but some kind of estimate of what would the cost effectiveness be if you included all of the technical potential, or it just sort of something that helps us visualize that likely cost curve for the non-cost effective measures to get some sense of, is it 20% of the technical potential? Is it 80%? And any of those indicators, I think, would be really helpful.
And I think, Dylan, you'll see some of that just in the updated results in terms of the technical versus the economic.
Yeah, just because it's broke with the updating of avoided costs.
Because they're so close now, and I don't know what you've been finding in your analysis, Joe, but with those avoided costs and with the non-energy benefits, the portfolios are going to. I mean, it's going to be much easier to construct a cost-effective portfolio, even if lighting isn't in there, than maybe that it's been in the past. I don't remember how much the values increased from what's currently being used, those emissions benefits, but the avoided costs we received are higher. The emissions benefits are higher. I think there are some new non-energy benefits included, that some of the adders that weren't included before.
So toward that end, I mean, if you could, I know avoided cost is not a single number, but if you could just provide like first year avoided costs for electricity with all of the adders, what did it go? What were you using? And what are you using now with sort of the update? So avoided costs went up from X to Y, and then economic potential, we'll be able to see went from X to Y. We'll begin to see, to your point, a little bit like what the first part of the shape of that curve was, right? And maybe we can do some extrapolation, but
I can tell you it's. It varies by utility, but I mean, just thinking about energy. Energy is the only thing that was changed here. It was roughly 10 cents a kilowatt hour, and now it's roughly 20 cents a kilowatt hour.
And Joe was just saying that he was kind of eyeballing the chart, but it looks like maybe like a 30% increase in economic potential.
Now it looks like for efficiency, it's a 50%.
50%.
I really, Eli, I really want to look at those, how you aggregated those avoided costs. I have a few questions on it. One is the we got the 9 cents. I think I heard you say earlier that that you had the nebs, other nebs were already in it. I thought I heard you just now say that y'all added those, but we've also got where the I was not clear where the capacity avoided cost was going in, because it's a per kWh number, and I assume you're just basically taking the capacity benefit and running it across the kilowatt hours. But I would really feel much more comfortable if we could just see that.
Yeah, and I was talking about not our modeling, but the current Empower cost effectiveness versus what's happening for the next cycle. And I was talking about some of those other benefits. But yes, we'll put that together. We do keep them separated in our model. So there was the per kilowatt hour, and then there's the per kilowatt capacity benefit that we're using.
Okay, just to be clear, we do include these benefits already. We started in 2021, effective 2020 for the 2021 evaluation. We include them. So
new future, the new air emissions.
Yes, yeah, all of the benefits went into the 2021 verification, which were completed in this fall. One other thing. So the CAC baseline, the SEER 13 issue, did y'all look across all measures to make sure that the standards and codes were updated?
Yes, so we did look at that. I think that air conditioner was one that probably just got, because that is regional. I think that's one that just got accidentally ported over from another study in the northeast.
So so your heat pumps were at SEER 14?
They were already correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's comforting. And when do you think you can get me the sheets for the measures, the benefit cost sheets for the measures that I sent an email about?
Trying today.
Okay. Okay. And so so I think from my perspective, what would make me more comfortable is if I could get those sheets, so I could just see if there's anything jumping out at me. If I could get a disaggregation of those avoided costs, so we understand what's going on. If you've already done lighting, the sector level, the cost effectiveness or the potentials with and without lighting. So if we could see, without electrification, but you've already got that there. So okay, so we can see that in your charts now. We just need to see the numbers, and then the port. So the port, and then the net to gross. Can I, if we have those mapped while you're in your system, could you just apply the net to gross and the cost effectiveness? Basically just be a multiplier on the costs and benefits, I think.
You mean just for the cost and benefit analysis we're doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or not to recalculate the potential?
Yeah, not recalculating it would recalculate the potential to the extent that it changed the cost effectiveness. So it could change that potential.
I think that's probably a question for this group about updating the potential again to include those. We had never planned to include net to gross in the cost effectiveness calculations in the potential.
Yeah, and for the group, somebody's going to have to do that, because for cost effectiveness in Maryland, we do include net to gross. So either I got to do it or AEG has to do it. And the problem is that it's much more. If I had all Eli's spreadsheets, then I could easily go in and do it. But we're backing everything out and having to calculate ratios and do all sorts of things, which is we got a time sensitivity here. So the net to gross, and then also the portfolio roll up, it's the same deal. This is all stuff I can do. I understand how cost or how these potential studies are done. I know what's going on basically in there, except it's black box. I can't see the assumptions and inputs and even the calculations that are going in there. So it's all, and Eli, I read through the documentation, like on the, what stuff goes into max and what goes into to your map and your wrap. And it's not enough detail in the documentation for me to really understand. It's kind of a conceptual high level discussion, but without seeing what's going on in these spreadsheets, or what, and in this case, right, you sent me the spreadsheet with the adoption spreadsheet, but that doesn't show me how from the surveys y'all calculated those wraps and maps. That's where the black box is, and I just, per Garrett's question earlier, I just have no idea what's going on there. So what we've tried to do, just for the record, everyone, I've tried not to get into AEG's business, right? Y'all hired them to do the potential study, let AEG do its thing, but it's kind of a trade-off. If AEG is doing their thing, then then I can't go. Then it's very hard for me to go do all these other calculations without some more transparency or assistance or or the spreadsheets or whatever.
Joe, so you essentially want to see the calculations, or the models, which I understand are proprietary. Is that correct, Eli?
Yeah, the actual models and I mean, we're happy to show them to Joe that they are complex. We showed them pieces of it. On
Right.
Monday.
I mean, is this
so I think that's the question of, how do we get you what you need, Joe, and when all these calculations, I mean, they're all in Excel, but they're deep.
It's also Judge McLean. It's also so I can see I got walkthroughs online, but it's all hard coded. And the stuff that I got received was hard coded. So I'm just, even on this avoided cost thing, I don't think anybody else would have picked that avoided cost number up. I'm just so steeped in this stuff that it jumps out at me, and it's an easy mistake to make, right? I don't hold anything against AEG for making that error. Anyone could have done it. The problem is that nobody can look inside this box to catch stuff like that. And so I really don't think it's, frankly, I don't think it's fair to the system that we're going and recalculating these numbers, but not having access to the machine.
Is this just a situation where we can just sign a non-disclosure agreement? I mean, that's what we typically do in cases. I know this is a little bit different.
That's something that would have to, obviously happen very quickly. It's a legal question. I work on this stuff all the time. I'm not sure I want to go sign on to, then if I'm doing something later on and somebody's saying, oh, you stole that out of my model, when actually I was doing it in, 1992. So that's where I get a little concerned about it, just from my company.
No, I get it. But I mean, in a case, like if we have a litigated case, I mean, that's typically how I know standards are different for like OPC staff and technical staff. We're kind of covered by statute, but I know you're a little bit different, Joe.
Yeah. I mean, some of these things seem, well, I don't know if there's a way to, get budget or whatever, but, to go run these things. It seems like it's for one, even on these these adoption, curves and stuff, I am not asking to look in these models to go, suggest other adoption curves, because any one of us will get there's no replication of those. Everyone in this call would get a different adoption curve if they went and did the numbers. So there's kind of not any real point to doing that. It's just understanding how it was done, though, that's where I would be focused. But given the timeline, I can't even focus on that. I don't even want to focus on that. We don't have time, unless we're going to do a delay after December 30th. But what we do need to do is align this potential study with the future programming work group prescribed cost effectiveness. And that's the net to gross and the sector level portfolio, and then take out lighting and possibly the desktop computers or, other things that are, going to have net to gross that are basically zero. And so that's where it just seems to me that AEG's in the system now. They're having to go make these updates. They know where all the cells are that would need to be changed. Eli, y'all understand? I mean, net to gross do y'all ever do net to gross in your model, or is that just?
I'd have to check. I mean, it's possible. Most jurisdictions we work in, we don't within the potential study assessment. I can't say we never have without talking to the team over here, but it's not
Yeah.
typical for us to include it in the potential study because these studies are looking at the ability to get energy savings. They're not specifying program design. They're, which is a heavy influence on the net to gross. So we're not trying to specify are these going to be upstream, midstream, downstream, or the actual parameters of how the programs will be designed, which are going to feed into the actual net to gross of the programs when they're run.
Yeah. And I just don't understand. I don't know how impactful it is, the net to gross. I can see where it could push things in both directions. But because it would get applied to costs, incremental costs, as well as the benefit stream. But I expect it would be material, and it certainly is a misalignment with what we do in Maryland. I've never heard anyone in Maryland propose that we should not be doing our cost effectiveness based on net to gross, or based on net savings. And then the portfolio is the elephant in the room. So I would recommend to the work group that we ask AEG to go see what it would involve while they're doing all this other recalculation, to go incorporate the net to gross and a portfolio roll up and see if we can't get that. Because I think AEG is going to be able to do it twice as fast as I can. I'm sure of that. And meanwhile, I can focus on QC with the just those benefit cost sheets. If once I get those today, I can quickly get back to you, Eli, if I'm seeing any issues, so we don't have, well, I'm just using, by the way, I requested a sample of measures that I would look at the cost benefit sheets just to see if there were issues with baselines, or, if anything's jumping out at me, and which is basically what I was doing the other day. We only looked at CAC and 2 issues came up. So I want to do that to make sure we don't have any other issues, before you release another version or another more numbers.
Eli, is that something you guys can do, or how massive of an undertaking are we talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest issue now is timing. We're coming up against the end of the year. A lot of people are going to be on vacation. I know we're on a tight timeline here for what you need to do. So I think that's something we'll need to think about. Joe, I can see with our team, if you're able to provide the net to grosses, how easy that is for us to incorporate and run another, I guess, different scenarios of potential, see how much they change. But beyond that, some of the portfolio level roll-ups you're talking about sound like more work. So I think it might be where you and I, Joe, have to reconnect and kind of understand what you're looking for us to do, and then think about the timeline we would actually be able to do it on.
Can I I'm sorry, there are other people trying to get in here, but let me just jump in. Christine, or you're on, right?
Yeah.
Hey, Christine, would you just send Eli right now the net to gross mapping? Right, we have that for commercial and residential, right?
Yeah, you just want the overall portfolio net to grosses? I mean, for split between the sectors?
Yeah, where we mapped them to those measures.
Okay.
Yeah, just forward it to him so that so Eli, you should have it in your box, and y'all can look into that. And can I just ask, on the portfolio level, how much is so basically, if I'm thinking right, on the portfolio level, we have a bunch of benefit cost ratios. We have the benefit cost going in, we have the measures going in and would increase in 2 ways. One, you could have an increased number of measures of each individual measures, I guess. 2, you could have more higher efficiency units, program units being added. And then what was it? Oh, then the third one is you could have wholly new measures, right, that are in your technical potential but not in the economic potential, right? Is that right? So those are the 3 ways that additional measures could be included could be added to the current scenarios as you try to move up to your potential at the sector level. Does that make sense?
What was the first way?
So the first would be more of the same type of measure. Is that a possible way, or is that?
That would be, I mean, not in our modeling.
Okay, that's right. You're assuming this
rates are defined. So you could say what would happen if we accelerated. We tried to get, instead of insulation over 20 years, we tried to get it over 10 years. We doubled the amount.
Okay. Yeah.
That wouldn't come through in our modeling directly.
And so that would be one possibility. So it would be that you penetrate faster or force stuff into the market faster than the natural turnover. That's kind of in effect an early replacement type model in effect. Then you have higher efficiency models that become cost effective, and then you have whole measures that become cost effective that were not. Right. So and then basically you're just putting those in in some sort of rank ordering until you get to a sector level cost effectiveness. And you're already doing you already have sector level scenarios, right? Yeah, but at the res and commercial sector, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, well, everything is at the measure level, and then we've rolled it up. Yeah, by
sector and commercial. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so basically you'd be taking those sector level rolling measures in through these three possible ways until you get up to a benefit cost of 1 at the sector level. And that's what needs to happen. Whoever does it, that's ultimately what's going to have to happen. And I'm sorry, I interrupted Josh and Garrett. Sorry.
And I would just say that we are working on that cost analysis. My guess is because we're screening in only cost effective measures, what we're going to see is going to be well over 1 for the cost effectiveness of the achievable scenarios. So you'd probably have to add a lot to bring that down to a 1.0 if that's what you're trying to do.
Oh, I'm sorry, say it again.
I expect that because every measure in our achievable potential is cost effective, when we're doing this cost benefit analysis at the utility level now, we might say, okay, that potential is that benefit cost ratio, that potential is a 3. And you're going to have to add in a lot to bring that down to a 1.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, so they would increase the potential a lot, I would expect. And right, we're agreeing on that, right? The sector level potential will be much higher than this measure level potential.
Yes, I think it would probably, given what we were just showing in terms of almost all the technical being economic, yes, you'd be pulling forward future potential.
Yeah. And so my guess, that's why I'm saying my guess is that the technical, where we're going to land with any of these things that we're talking about, possibly the net to gross could upend things. But my guess is that we're going to end up for economic potential, at least at technical potential. And possibly, I would expect that the max potential at least would also be at the technical potential. And once you go up to sector level, because like you say, you got a bunch of measures in these potential right now that are, have benefit costs of, 3 or 8 or 9 or whatever, right? And so you can add a lot of cost effectiveness less than 1 in there and still be cost effective at the sector level.
Mm-hmm. And your net to gross, you apply it to the incremental cost, you apply it to the savings, but not to the administrative costs. So that's
right.
The part that makes it less cost effective.
Yeah, technically we do apply it to some outside services cost, like where a direct install where somebody says they would have done it anyway. But for our purposes, if we would not apply it, given our timeline, but except to admin, to incremental cost and then the benefit streams. And one other thing, we did, Christine, we got ratios from Tyler the other day for the admin cost and the rebate cost, because currently Eli and company are using the 30% of incremental cost is the admin, and and 60% or something, I think, or 65% was rebates. And did Tyler, when Tyler ran the numbers, I think he got some different ratios.
Yeah, so they're a little higher than that, closer to, let's see, about 40 overall for the portfolio. It's 46% of incremental measure costs would be the admin costs.
Yeah, and then rebate. Did y'all do rebates too?
Yeah, we did rebates as well. That is 58%.
Okay. So those would have probably a little downward pressure on port sector level cost effectiveness once those get right, because you wouldn't have a net to gross applied to that 46% admin rather than not applying it to a 30% admin. So I'm going to stop. Other people are trying to get in here.
Hey, Joe, before you mute yourself, I got one question for you. On this net to gross cost effectiveness, did you just presume it was going to be in the study, or was it not? Was it discussed by the stakeholders? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I was. Well, I kind of wasn't in the scope and all that, so I think this was not included in the scope of work or something in that design. But yeah, so I don't know exactly how that. I don't know exactly how that transpired.
All right, fair enough.
We have always used net to gross in our cost.
Understood. All right. We'll go Garrett and then Josh. Thanks for your patience, fellas.
No, thanks, Judge. I feel like I'm just maybe stating the obvious, but for the sake of another voice saying it, I very much support us doing the additional analysis that Joe is suggesting here. It should be done. I mean, it sounds quite likely that this will reveal additional potential that would be cost effective when considered together. And I think it's very important that we become aware of that potential at this stage. A little bit more analytical work here in this stage, while it is a lot to cram in and may affect some of our really near-term deadlines. Like this is going to inform the program planning that we're doing for the next few years. And I think it's given that we know that we need to achieve even more than the technical potential as a state, it's very important that we push ourselves to make sure we are aware of all of the real potential that's out there that we might be able to take action on. So just very much support one way or another, somebody doing the analysis that Joe's talking about. Thank you.
All right, Josh.
Thanks, Josh. And I think just my comments and questions are just on behalf of Wash Gas and not for the joint utilities. Just want to put that on the record. So Eli and Joe, just to clarify, all this conversation that we are having right now, all the additional work that needs to be done is beyond the scope that we as a work group and AEG set out to do on the onset, correct? So this would be additional work. So that means we would have to amend contracts, increase funding, push timelines, and reevaluate the work plan that AEG put together. Is that an accurate assessment of where we are right now?
From my perspective, yes. So we went through the process of developing a work plan. We tried to communicate what we thought was in scope throughout the process with the stakeholders and really to understand the objectives and how the study would be used. And a lot of this is now new to us. So yes, that's consistent with how I would think about this.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. And just for I want everyone to understand this, like where we are right now is a little bit concerning. I understand the importance of really trying to get this right and turn over every stone and look at every piece of information in order to increase the potential and help guide future program design and goal setting. I totally get that. But there's been ample time for this work group and for all parties involved to look at what is beginning. And we all had ample time to take a look at the scope and come to some form of consensus here. And now where we are is like, oh, AEG, you know what? Your study's not really good enough. It's not really passing the bar. We need you to go back and do it again. And I find that a little concerning right now because we brought on AEG as the subject matter experts. They've got the market cornered with doing these type of potential studies. And I'm a little concerned of where we are right now. And Joe, going back to your point here, you do have a point that, yeah, there's some black box stuff happening right there, and you're asking for some proprietary information. And I just want to be clear on why you want that additional information and make sure that it's on the record here. One, and correct me if I'm wrong and speak up here, but one is that you want to fact check AEG's work because there might be some mistakes or there might be some things that maybe not what we're trying to get done in Power Maryland. Or is it two, for more just for you and your team to gain a better understanding? Or is it required and necessary information that you need to achieve some type of task or accomplishment that's going to, guide future programming work group deliverables or empower evaluation? I really think it's important you kind of lay out why you need that information.
Happy to. So first off, this is a black box model. I have never seen the inside of it until the other day when I started and was never planning to look inside of it. If Maryland wants to use black box models for their potential study, that's y'all's business. We don't allow it on, I'll just say we don't allow it on the evaluation side. Anybody comes with a black box for verification and evaluation, I'm all over it. And so I'll just say that up front. Two, the reason that I got into this was because we need to make adjustments for portfolio level cost effectiveness and for the net to gross and for the lighting, at least. And so I was trying to set up for the work group so that we would have the flexibility so we could go do whatever calculations the work group needs to do, and then I will do it. So that's why I got into it. Like I said earlier, I am not trying to go in and question Eli's adoption rates or anything like that. It's black box, but it's professional judgment. It's not how we do it on the evaluation side, but if that's what y'all want, go for it. But if we're going to make those recalculations to make the potential study line up with what the future programming work group said was the structure of the goal, then we have to make these other adjustments. And I can't make those without the information that I've been requesting. And I can't make them without mapping the net to gross, which we've done, which means I've got to then go and we've already gone back through and tried to, backed in our benefit cost and the various stuff for different measures with the expectation we're going to have to add a bunch of measures in for portfolio level. I've been doing everything on my end to expedite and not involve Eli and AEG, but we've got a black box here, so it's kind of impossible for me not to involve AEG. So I'm not trying to create problems for anybody. In fact, very much the opposite. I've been trying to smooth this out and repair things. Did that cover your questions, Josh?
Yes, thanks.
I'd just like to jump in there. We certainly don't consider it a black box. It's built in Excel. We have clients who run it themselves. We do provide training on it. We're happy to show the model. We're happy to, as I said, provide the model as long as there's appropriate confidentiality. So I don't know how this compares to some of the other models you're talking about, Joe, on the evaluation side, but we think the model is pretty transparent. It's complex. It's hard to understand. It's hard to learn how to run, but it is, all the information is there and all the calculations are live.
Well, I still haven't seen them. And we're on a short time leash. I'm having to, we're talking NDAs for me to go look at some formulas, which were, it's like, I understand this complexity argument, but I don't buy it. I've been in this business since the early 90s, and this stuff we're not talking brain science here. S curves are probably the most sophisticated thing that people do that could be called, complex, but I can go do an S curve in Excel just by, describing my S curve and applying it. It's like, there's nothing in this model that is too complex for me or probably 90% of my team to understand. And probably a lot of it is stuff that I've done before, and who knows who's pulling stuff from who. But I'm sorry, I'm I just, the black boxes don't work for me. I will tell you that. And I do think it's a black box to the extent that, people got to jump through all sorts of hoops to go see it. I sent out, we sent out yesterday our time-based benefits worksheets, no black boxes there and no restrictions on anybody who wants to look at it and use it. Maryland paid for it, so we're giving it. It's out there. Everything we do is provided in a full form with all the calculations behind it, because I want, if nothing else, I want to encourage people to go look at it. I want people to go look over our shoulders to make sure we're doing stuff right. And that's what I can't easily do. I had to go get you to go into a cost-effective, the benefit cost sheet for a measure, one single measure. I said, let's just look at one single measure. I wasn't, asking to go look at 5 measures even, just one measure. Just let me go kind of, walk me through that. And a couple, pretty, momentous things. At least there was actually more than just the baseline and the greenhouse gas and the air emissions benefit. And I still don't know what's in your emissions benefit. So I don't know. I don't know how else to describe it except black box. And we can trust. We can just trust that everything's cool. And just run with it. But right now, after looking at some stuff, I wouldn't. But I recommend to the work group that this is how things are set up. This is per Josh's point. This is the agreement that y'all have with the AEG, who has the corner, as you say, on the market for potential studies. And so let's let them go do the calculations then. And I will be happy to stay out of it. But right now we don't have a potential that lines up with the future programming work group. And that's the meeting we're in here. All these people in this meeting agreed to that construct.
You go ahead, Dylan.
Thanks. So I think, again, get the what OPC will have to do in 15 days is file comments with the commission, and I don't think it's going to be helpful in those comments to kind of point any fingers. I appreciate the stakeholder process. We didn't get everything we wanted out of it, but I think there was a lot of transparency. We tried to give AEG input. I wish we'd given some different input. The 250 percent for federal poverty limit. I also can't remember that coming up, but I don't disagree. We picked the wrong number, and we'll kind of have to live by that, and we'll have to kind of we'll have to use some judgments about the low income potential that correspond to actual program requirements, and that's just judgment that we're going to have to make based on that data. And we can do the same thing with the technical potential. We're going to have to explain to the commission that some portion of the technical potential is actually eligible to be part of Empower programs, and we're going to have to sort of explain that to the commission, and the commission's just going to have to sort of listen to different parties about how much of that that is. And so I think we can say all of that, and Josh, I don't think it's going to really be super helpful to the commission to say, well, we agreed on those parameters. We may have agreed on those parameters, but at the end of the day, the commission still has to set goals based on a set of data, and those goals should be consistent with how programs operate. And so we're going to have to, present argument to the commission and sort of do the best we can to kind of unpack and repack the data. And I think that may be what we have to do. And I don't think that's the end of the world, but I think if there's ways to minimize the degree to which parties are having to kind of make interpretive judgments, the better off the commission is going to be.
All right. Yes, Josh.
Just a question back for Dylan. So Dylan, I think is it fair to say that, you know, and I'm your comment back is that the information that AEG has put together through the potential study is not adequate enough at this point in time for us to build a goal structure for Empower or for the utilities to generate programs in order to meet goals?
No, I wouldn't say that exactly. I think that to do so, it requires some. You got a lot of feedback there, Josh. If you can, sorry. Thank you. I think the content is there, but it requires, as it stands, more interpretation and some judgments or some further assumptions. And we can do that. We can provide that. OPC can, and other parties can. And I don't. That's sometimes how, you know, disputes of facts get resolved. I think there's lots of content that enables us to do that. It's a bigger step than I think it might have been and might be if there was some way to try and resolve some of the issues that Joe is bringing up. I think doing that would narrow the sort of dispute about how to do that interpretation.
Okay, understood. Thanks for that, Dylan. I think, so I just want to, you know, when we do have the final comments to the commission, and, you know, just to kind of just quickly just, you know, point out yours, right? I want to make this clear, and I don't think this is necessarily being communicated, but I just want to go on the record that, you know, this isn't really AEG's fault, right? I think this is also, we have to point fingers at ourselves as a work group, contract, and we, you know, asked, you know, gave parameters and gave input on what we wanted to see as a work group, and they set out to get that work done. And so if it's not really passing the bar right now, I think that's on us and not necessarily AEG. I think it's important that is expressed in any kind of comments to the commission.
All right. Thanks, Josh. Joe.
Yeah. So first off, I'm not trying to cast blame at anybody. I was kind of defending the system, though, and critical of black boxes, right? So whoever has a black box is on my hit list, frankly. It just makes it so hard to look over stuff. In terms of comments, though, I don't think you got to really have to talk about the study at all, or you might consider the possibility of saying, look, we've talked about goal structure. You got a number of other questions that y'all been dealing with in terms of the BTM versus front of the meter issues, and then limited income goals, and which are going to be largely not based on this, I think. And so then really all we're talking about here is what the goal is, and aligning whatever the potential study with how the future programming work group has set up it's the existing structure. It's already been prescribed. And so, you know, I don't know if the commission is insisting on having a goal on the December 30th meeting, or whether that's something that could be put off for another month or something, you know, to give more time to wrestle with these issues. But and I'm not recommending that the work group or any of the comments go and trash AEG or anybody else. I'm just trying to get us to the end zone here.
Right, Joe, just to clarify, I believe the 1230 comments are just for the potential study, and then we have to submit a report as a work group on the 13th on the structure.
I see.
Of the goal.
Yeah. Maybe you could flip that or something.
It might be a bit late to do. Yeah, I mean, some good points, interesting points. It seems like obviously big issues, the timing, that's obviously weighs against us. The fact that the contract didn't include this, or stakeholders didn't bring it up, that's also an issue. And at least I've been on notice that these calculations are considered proprietary for at least a month or so. So that shouldn't have been news. So, but it is what it is at this point. I think everyone has to do the best that they can with the information they have. And I don't know. Let's see. Okay, Tunde agrees it's time, but so I'm not sure what more we can do, at least on that cost effectiveness net to gross issue. That might be just beyond the scope of AAG's contract with the utilities. So that ship may have sailed. All right.
Can I just ask,
Please.
for clarity, Eli, in the contract or whatever in your scope, did it say no net to gross, or did it just not say it was going to do a benefit cost analysis, but it didn't say? Did it specify it was going to be measure level cost effectiveness? Did it specify that it was going to be not based on net savings or net to gross?
I don't know if it's specified. I'll have to go back and look at the scope of work, but we did communicate that throughout, that's what we were planning to do.
Well, let me because I've been in these meetings, and I know you had talked that we're talking gross savings, right? So I know for the potential, that was always the discussion, was gross potential was based on gross savings. So there's no question in my mind about that. But cost effectiveness, I fell out of my seat, but I'm probably just ignorant of how things go, in the potential study world. But I think Sammy also indicated that he was surprised. And I talked to another person who was kind of my mentor in this business, and he was surprised. He said when they did potential studies that they did it based on net. So that's, it's kind of one of those things where there's no reason to talk about it, because it's kind of, or at least for me, it was assumed. And so it's not explicit, as far as I know, it's not explicit anywhere that it was stated. So it was, the gross savings was referring to the potential, as far as I knew. And then on the portfolio level cost effectiveness, was that, we were doing cost effectiveness for Maryland. Maryland is explicitly portfolio level cost effectiveness. So I'm not sure exactly how that got missed. Is that something that weren't we supposed to? Why isn't AEG? Wouldn't it line up with Maryland's? That's not an evaluation advisory group decision on portfolio level cost effectiveness. That's the commission, and it's actually been the case since 2012 or something like that. So I guess I'm just going to push back a little bit on some of these things that the expert in the room has been AEG doing the study, and that other people are supposed to kind of catch these things. And I'm not suggesting anyone needs to go trash AEG. Shit happens. That's just, no problem with that. But we got to, we got to figure out how to deal with it. And that's why I'm just wondering, I really strongly urge y'all to, and Eli, for you to, dig in, get up to your elbows in this to go try to make these adjustments, and that whatever cost or whatever need to be incurred or need to happen, that people get around it. Because otherwise you got a pretty major investment in a study that's you're basically gonna, you may go to the commission with some numbers or whatever, but they're not going to really be, everybody's going to be going, well, we just ended up at a negotiated number anyway.
Yeah, and on that,
I'm sorry, Eli, just as a reminder, I am recording these. These are going to be up on the web page for the public to see. So if people could watch their language, and I'm not really sure, I think we may have gotten all we're going to get out of this conversation. Eli, please go ahead.
Sorry, Judge.
Thanks, Judge. So I want to make a distinction between a potential study and a program design or portfolio design effort. We often see these. Sometimes they are linked in an RFP. Oftentimes they're not. So we will typically apply that, we're doing measure level screening. There's a separate process to take those results and then design portfolios and targets around them. So that's where we see the distinction here. That work was not in our scope of work, to actually now take the results of the potential study and design cost-effective portfolios. So I think that's the phase that you're getting into now, Joe. And that was definitely not within what was asked within the RFP.
Okay, thanks.
All right.
And I
so-
apologize again, Judge McLean.
Sorry. Yeah, no, I slip up myself from time to time. So the big question is, where do we go from here, at least in terms of just a potential study and what folks are hoping to see in the limited time that we have? Or are we good with waiting to see what AEG puts out this afternoon or tomorrow, I believe?
I'll say from our perspective, we do have the updated results ready. We'll send those out. We'll send some of the documentation, the background that Joe's been asking for, especially around avoided costs. Also, just want to say, I appreciate the review you've done, Joe. I mean, we own our mistakes. That was a mistake that we made. Definitely wish we had caught it earlier, and appreciate you for pointing it out. We'll provide the information you're asking for. Hopefully, that doesn't identify any additional issues. But I know, it sounds like it's not worth waiting for you to do that review and then potentially providing an updated set of results. Hopefully not, that this group is in need of the updated results. So I think that would be our plan, is send out the current version of the results, send the information to you, Joe, on the measure level, cost effectiveness analysis, and the avoided cost calculations, the build up to the avoided costs that we're using now.
Okay, and so I guess I need to get clear on my marching orders. So I'm hearing that AEG is not going to be able to do these other things, and so, or maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm hearing wrong, and so Christine and I will continue to. We'll take the net to gross, and we will try to go roll up to portfolio level as best we can with the stuff we have. And so we'll have, basically we got, next week well, we don't even have that. I don't know. We're going to have to, we'll just try to do it as fast as we can. We've got stuff as set up as much as we can. We've just been waiting for data. So we'll try to inform as best we can, so people have something in hand, next week.
Thanks, Joe. Yes, sir, Dylan.
Thank you, Your Honor. Joe, if you want to talk with me about that this afternoon or tomorrow morning, I'm happy to do that. I don't know that I'll have a lot to offer to help you do that, but if you would benefit from touching base, I am glad you're going to try and tackle that.
Okay, thanks, Dylan. I think we've got the main thing is just getting the data we need in a form. There will be definitely some fudging that'll have to be done because we're backing out numbers from the AEG numbers. So we will, but I think what we'll at least shoot for by early next week is giving an order of magnitude kind of assessment of what happens with the portfolio cost of what the portfolio cost effectiveness and potential look like, and with the net to gross. So we won't be able to do much more than that, and we won't be able to come into it with these three different directions of increase that I talked about earlier. I think I don't think we'll be able to do that, but we'll even try to work on that. So we'll do the best we can. That's all I can say.
That's all we can ask. And to the extent anyone has any conversations with Eli and his team, if it's substantive, if you want to let the rest of the work group know what the results of those conversations are, I'm sure everyone would be appreciative of that. All right. I'm not even sure if Eli. Oh, yeah, Eli is still here. Anything else? I think he may have about 5 more minutes left with us. All All right, Eli, thank you very much for your time today. I know we all really appreciate your time and your efforts on this.
Thank you, Judge, and thanks everybody else. Bye.
Thank you. All right. All right. So it's 11:26. Scott, is Jackie here yet? I know you said she wasn't available till 11:30.
I don't know. Jackie, are you on yet or no? Doesn't.
Okay. We can
see
come
her
back.
on the list. I'm sorry, I don't see her on the list of participants yet.
Okay. All right. We'll come back then. All right. All right. So, Joe, did you have any further updates? I know that was on my notes.
Yes.
Okay. You want to hit those updates now, sir?
Christine, you want to throw it up on the screen? The emissions. So we were just going to give a quick overview. We gave this to the evaluation advisory group yesterday, but a quick overview of the emissions, how the emissions benefits change, given a couple things that are going on. You still there, Christine, or you want me to do it?
I am here. I'm
Okay.
just getting it open right now.
Yeah, and I went back and looked at the report. We definitely talk about, if there's a change in the emissions. It didn't look like the commission included anything in the order about it, though. But I know you had said we did address it in the work group report, so
Yeah.
I was able to confirm that.
Yeah, Nicole sent some stuff around yesterday, and just to refresh our memories, and it looks like it's kind of, even from the report, it's kind of open-ended. It looked to me in one place like it was saying the EAG should decide, but then that seems to me, given these kind of changes, I recommend it to be a future programming work group. Oh, and the other thing in it said, in one place it was like report to the commission, and another place it seemed like it was just something we do. But I would say if we did do something like this now or later, that it should be higher than just the EAG. Be my recommendation.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. I'm sorry, Christine, I didn't mean to jump in.
No, that's okay. Joe, I'm having trouble sharing. If you wouldn't mind popping it open.
Okay, yeah.
This happened to me yesterday too. I need to figure this out.
No problem. Give me 1 second here. Let's see here. This is by the way, everybody, this is the document I forwarded right before the meeting today. Sorry, I meant to send it earlier. I just forgot. Okay, now I can go. It's coming. Don't panic. All righty, you should be looking at it now.
Yeah, we got it, sir.
Okay.
Okay, so there are a couple of updates that have occurred since we put these together last year. And this first section up there, starting rows 3 through 15, those include the updates to criteria emissions, where we are using the AVERT emissions rates, and those were updated in 2022. So they've been updated with the new values and then rerun through COBRA. And also the EIA had a new forecast for criteria emissions. So those updates have been implemented in those rows up at top. You can compare them to what we are currently using, which are down in rows, starting in row 37. And what basically it's about a 4% increase between the current values and updating using the latest and greatest criteria emissions rates. So that's what that first section is, which is those are using the latest and greatest values. Now, I also ran a scenario, the EPA, who is part of the interagency working group, which is our source of the social cost of carbon, have come out with updated social cost of carbon costs for both carbon and then also methane emissions. And they are they're in draft format right now, and so they are out for public review and will be at some point, presumably that will go into the interagency working group to decide whether or not they're going to adopt them. However, there's no published timeline on any of that. But I wanted to go ahead and see what effect that would have on our benefits for CO2 and methane. And as you can see, it's about 30% increase on the CO2, but actually a decrease on the methane emissions because their assumptions on the methane decreased. So yeah, we just wanted to get these out there to show the group and see what type of appetite there was for making the updates.
So just everybody, so just I want to make sure you're clear. So it's 9.5 cents is current. If you change the criteria emissions benefit based on the revisions to avert, you go to 9.9 cents up here in row 5. And Christine, the avert numbers are final, right? Those are not in draft form or anything. Am I correct?
Correct. Yeah, they update them every year based on the latest.
So basically, that would be a nominal increase of from 9.5 cents to 9.9 cents per kilowatt hour. I'm just giving you of course, we have the numbers here for fuels also. And then the updated EPA cost includes these criteria emissions benefit costs. So that would increase the benefit if we do the new EPA costs, but they're not final. And the expectation is they'll be final this year, but which will be before 2024, but they're not final now. So anyway, that would be a 30% or something increase in the benefit. Or I take it from, well, no, actually it'd be close to 10 cents a kilowatt hour up here with the avert adjustment, and then add 2.7 cents to that. So about a 25% increase. So we don't, given other issues and stuff, we're not recommending anything here. We just wanted to inform you. If the work group were going to do anything right now on this, I would, it would be really, the only thing you really could do would be to go with the avert, make the adjustment for avert, the update for the EPA and interagency working group social cost of carbon. We'll have to wait till they're totally finalized, which the expectation is that will happen, since it is the IWG working on this, and that's their recommendation, but they're waiting comments. So that's all we got.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Christine. Any questions, comments on these numbers or what we should do with them? Anyone at all? Yep. Joe, do you have anything else?
Well, no, I would just say partly I'm throwing these up here just to make sure that we don't have it. It's not on our to-do list. So it's available if people want it, but otherwise I'm dropping it as of now, not hearing people clamoring to say, oh yeah, we need to go make that adjustment. We'll just put it in our pocket for later until it comes up again.
Aye, aye. All right. Thanks again. All right. I think I saw Jackie, are you with us, ma'am? Jackie?
Hi, sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Good. Did you want to get, or I think Scott, I don't know, Valen told me that you might be doing a kind of an overview of DHCD's comments that were circulated yesterday, ma'am?
Sure, I can do that.
Right.
I'll go ahead and share my screen if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, can you see that? Oh,
Yes,
wait, one
ma'am.
second. It's coming up.
Yep, it's coming up. We got it.
Okay, good. So I'm sorry I don't have a presentation. This was kind of a last minute thing, but what I can do is I can walk through the document and just kind of give an overview of what we did. Before I get started, Scott, do you want to provide an introduction to what we were doing, or do you want me just to jump right in?
No, I'll give an introduction just so that, people are either reminded or at least become familiar, why we have this. So for those of you that were involved, back in the August area, when we were talking about low income goals, and kind of not knowing where to go, we decided that Cadmus would pull together a study to determine or identify, potential for low income savings opportunity. And so that was provided to the group in August, but it seemed, the group decided to not act on that as far as trying to determine a low income goal at that time. It was decided that they would wait, we would wait for the potential study to be provided and, work, like for the utilities, work off of that for a low income goal. But when the potential study came out, there were, as we've been discussing, there's, there are differences and variations there that DHED asked Jackie to evaluate to kind of try to determine, why is there a difference in the low income numbers being reported, EEG versus Cadmus. And so Jackie went through the data from both parties. And I think, as Eli mentioned a little bit earlier, we had a conversation with him this week so that Jackie could better understand some of their approach towards some of their data so that she could just have a better understanding of getting into her analysis. And so this memo is the result of her analysis that we wanted to make sure, we shared with the group. So everybody is kind of on the same page as what we're looking at as far as variations go between the two studies to help inform, maybe where that low income goal should be. And like I was saying earlier, maybe it's not AEG's data, maybe it's not Cadmus's, maybe it's somewhere in between.
Okay, thank you. So what we did in this memo was to first go through the spreadsheet model that AEG put together and select particular parameters that we wanted to look at that we felt would be most comparable to what Cadmus did, and then put together the summary data. So we selected the parameter, the resource type was energy efficiency, because in the analysis that Cadmus did, they're looking at historical savings from Empower limited income programs, which do not include electrification. So we focused on energy efficiency. We focused on the economic potential, which looks at the cost-effective opportunities. Now, while the Empower limited income programs do not have a requirement that they're cost-effective, it is something that's looked at and taken into account. So that was the model that we went with. We focused on residential. The market segment was single-family low income or multifamily low income. We looked at both electric and gas, and we looked at existing homes only because the basis for the Cadmus analysis was the American Community Survey homes, which are existing homes. So that we felt was the best comparison. One thing that's important to note was that we put these estimates together before the changes that Eli was talking about earlier. So with the changes that he talked about, these numbers would be higher. But the first thing that we did was to say, under those parameters, this is what the summary of the potential lifetime greenhouse gas reduction potential is. So that's what's shown in the first table. And then we went and we compared the energy savings potential that was developed in the two studies. And so this table here, table 2-1, shows the comparison. The first column shows the estimates from the Cadmus study. Again, just to remind you of how this was done, was looking at the American Community Survey estimate of the number of households up to 250% of the poverty level, subtracting the households who had already been served by the Empower limited income programs, and then multiplying the number that remained to be served by the historical savings level in the Empower programs. So you can see the Cadmus estimate here. The second column is the AEG analysis of potential savings. And as Eli discussed, those are for 6 years. So that's through 2029. And then what we did was we projected that through the full 20-year period. So if the savings that they show are 30% of total savings, because it's 6 years instead of 20 years, we said, what would the savings be if it was 20 years instead? So in our more detailed conversation with AEG yesterday, one of the things that they explained to us is that for the types of improvements like insulation and air sealing, the non-equipment improvements, those are over a 20-year period. But for the equipment improvements, it might be replaced in less than a 20-year period because, for example, if the heating system lifetime is only 15 years, all of these systems would be replaced in 15 years. But we felt like that looking at the full potential would be more comparable to what Cadmus did, because Cadmus is looking at all eligible households who had not yet been served. You can see that the first estimate, which is only through 2029, is much lower with the AEG estimate for both electric and gas than the Cadmus estimate. But if you look at the full potential through the 20 years, the electric estimate is much higher for AEG than for Cadmus, but the gas estimate is still considerably lower. There's several potential reasons for the differences between these two studies, and we do have a better understanding of why there are differences and the specific calculations that AEG did after talking to them yesterday, but this was written before then. But first of all, the methods for calculating the savings are different. The Cadmus method is based on the historical Empower savings, whereas the AEG method is based upon looking at replacement of measures compared to the baseline efficiency level. As Sammy talked about earlier, the baseline efficiency level for limited income households that's used in the Cadmus study is the existing equipment efficiency level rather than the minimum allowable efficiency level at the time that the measures are replaced. In terms of the participants, again, the Cadmus study is looking at all households that have not yet had Empower services and up to 250% of the poverty level. And the AEG study is looking at replacing the measures at the time of replacement, or installing 1/20th of the opportunity for non-equipment measures each year. And the AEG estimates of what the opportunities are based upon surveys that they've done, looking at TRMs, and making adjustments from the general population of opportunities to low-income opportunities. And then also, as we've discussed, another difference between the Cadmus study and the AEG study is the 200 versus 250% of poverty level that's used. So the rest of the memo just goes into a little bit more detail on the savings potential by utility, looking at the cadmus savings by utility, then looking at the AEG estimate of savings by utility through 2029, and then looking at the AEG estimate of savings for the whole 20-year period. So that's basically what we did in the memo. And then one last thing, at the end, we put in the measures that were considered in the AEG study for comparison to think about other potential reasons for differences between AEG and cadmus, because again, AEG is based upon the measure level calculation of potential savings.
All right. Thank you very much, Jackie. I appreciate that. Dylan, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Jackie and Scott, for providing this. Very helpful. I think my question is mostly, maybe it's a follow-up, presumably it is if you don't have these numbers. Can you provide your estimates of the number of households under the 200% of FPL and under 250?
We can, in the estimates that Cadmus put together, it definitely has already included the estimate of the number of households under 250.
Okay.
To go back to the number under 200, we'd have to go back to the ACS data and calculate that. It's definitely something that could be done, but those aren't numbers that we have available, right at our fingertips.
Okay. Well, maybe this is another AEG can provide. I mean, there's the results isn't. I don't think their worksheet includes number of households.
No, it includes instead of the number of households, the AEG spreadsheet includes the number of opportunities that would be installed. Sometimes it's at the measure level, like for a heating system, and sometimes it's at the square foot level for insulation or air sealing or something like that.
Yeah. I think if you can provide, so I can look at the Cadmus results.
I'll tell you, Dylan. I'm sorry,
yes,
Sammy. It is 600,000 households under the 250% of the federal poverty.
Okay. Do you want to? And any of you want to hazard an informal guesstimate of what would be under 200?
And I just want to back up for 1 second, Dylan, and just get a clarification from Sammy. Sammy, is the 600 total eligible households in Maryland, or is that including those that were served? I thought we were in the area of 560,000 that were.
No, you are right, Scott. This is the total. So once we remove those that are served, we dropped down to about 560. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that's great clarification. Because
I'd like.
I just goes to I mean, one option for trying to do some alignment would be to apply a very simplistic scalar to the AEG estimates. If there were, 400,000 households under 200,000. Obviously, it's assuming that all of the houses are sort of homogeneous, but just sort of multiplying it times 50%, that might be an approximation for what AEG's estimate would be applied to the higher threshold.
Certainly. I'm sorry. This is Sammy again, if I may. So first of all, so Jackie, thanks. The good approach, and all of the differences you highlighted are right on. But I would like to let you all know, I don't really think that neither the Cadmus nor the AEG number is true potential for all the reasons that Jackie pointed out. But the good news, it doesn't really matter. Because the two numbers are so high that it's not feasible to serve that potential at all. Based on our numbers, it'll probably take about 120 years to serve that whole population. So it is a good theoretical value to know, but it's not really all that relevant in terms of setting goals for energy efficiency or greenhouse gases. It is an important number to know, because to know the size of the of the problem, the need in the state. But I would suggest to you that that issue, the issue of equity of 600,000 people whose energy burden is hindering their lifestyle, is not an issue that can be solved with energy efficiency.
Right. And even agree, even if you had enough funding and did every possible type of outreach, you're never going to get every eligible household to participate in the program. And even if you did, you're still going to have people who have unaffordable energy because of their income.
Yeah. I mean, there's certainly, I apologize, Sammy Kawaja again, there's definitely some serious equity issues that we're talking about here. There's the issue of the fact that I think we're collecting more surcharge out of the entire low-income community that we're providing services to. So in a way, I mean, not in a way, it's exactly the case that the low-income community is actually subsidizing the non-low-income community. Within the low-income community, we have 600,000 households that are paying a surcharge, and about 5,000 of those annually get served through the traditional weatherization. So there's a much bigger problem that needs to be dealt with. I don't know if this is really the right forum for it, but it's, as Jackie pointed out, I think in the memo, I mean, there are three components to the energy burden. I mean, there's the amount of energy that's being used, and yeah, we can address that through energy efficiency, but it's such a tiny, tiny piece of the puzzle. There's the income. There's not a whole lot anybody on this call could do with income. That just leaves rates. So I'm not sure if this is the right time or place to talk about rates.
Well, maybe I'll throw in there too, Scott with DHCD. I think order 90261, I could have the number backwards or something, required the low-income work group to procure a affordability study to help the commission better understand situations like that, Sammy, where low-income people, how much of the surcharge is impacting low-income households, and if the surcharge is raised to get to more people, would it be more of a burden to the customers? And so because the low-income work group didn't have the resources to do the study, the work group agreed to have Jackie do the affordability study for the commission, which is that study is going to be filed today. And Jackie had some recommendations in there for the commission to consider. I don't know, Jackie, if you're prepared, if you'd be able to just, let the group know what some of those recommendations might be.
Sure. So this study looked at the energy costs and energy burden for LIHEAP recipients, because those were the households that we had data for, and found high energy burdens even after taking account of the LIHEAP benefits and the EUSP benefits. So one of the other questions that we were directed to address was, how could other programs help assist these households to afford their energy bills, and to look at different types of benefit structures that had been put into place. And we provided some information on different benefit structures that are based upon energy burden, or that are based upon providing a fixed level of benefits. And what the research has shown, some research that was presented in this memo, as well as many other research studies that have been done, is that if you provide energy assistance benefits that are targeted to reach a particular energy burden level, as opposed to providing a fixed level of energy benefit, then you're going to get to more equitable outcomes, and you're going to be able to bring more households down to a targeted level of energy burden. And one of the ways that's found to have been most targeted towards that is a percentage of income payment program, where households' energy assistance levels are targeted to them paying a fixed amount to get them to pay a certain percentage of their income on energy costs. For example, 6% is a percentage level that's often talked about.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. Oh, go ahead, Doc.
Yep. Sorry. Thank you. Thanks, Jackie. I agree with you. I mean, obviously, we either need to reduce the overall cost of energy through energy efficiency or through energy assistance. In my opinion, I think whatever you come up with has to be easy to implement. Energy assistance programs, while I think they're fantastic, they're really difficult to implement over a long period of time, because you got to identify people, you got to go through the whole process. I mean, I'm just going to express my own bias, and my own bias is to strongly to go towards low income rates, and not even PIP, because PIP does remove the relationship between energy consumption and cost, and I think it could have possibly negative impact on energy efficiency. So if it were up to me, I would say that what the solution to the problem, it's a combination of things, obviously, but the real long-term equitable solution to the problem is low income rates. The problem with that is the revenue impact on utilities, but it can be structured in a way to reduce the impact of the lost revenues on the utilities, maybe through some kind of a time of use, low income rates or something like that. But all of these things are band-aids, I think, unless we have a real low income rate design, the equity issue will remain out there.
Thank you, sir. Dylan.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm taking us sort of in a different direction from some of the policy questions, which are really important, but another kind of technical question on the memo and the analysis for Jackie. The megawatt hour and therm savings from the AEG report, I don't think I saw summaries of those in the tabs in the worksheet that AEG did. Did you have to recreate those using the detailed studies with kind of filtering by measures the way you described, sort of existing homes and et cetera?
Yeah, it's what we had to do was to filter the spreadsheet for those parameters that I discussed, and then add up all of the measure level savings to come up with those estimates.
Okay. You may do this based on the AEG updates, but in any case, if either way, I would like to be able to kind of recreate that based on the updated spreadsheets that they're going to be sending us, because those economic potentials will increase. So I just wanted to confirm how you did that. Thanks.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you, sir. Thank you, Jackie. Anybody else have anything, questions, comments for Jackie? All right, I guess the bigger question is, where do we go from here on DHCD? I don't know. Scott, you got any thoughts?
No, I'll leave the goals up to the group. You know, again, you know, we're not going to suggest a goal, but we'll do what we're told to do.
Okay. All right.
I have a question.
Please.
The map. I mean, the business as usual case for efficiency and the max potential case are different for limited income. And why, I was wondering why that would be the case, since DHCD is paying the full cost. Right, my understanding was that the max was basically if you were aggressive, paid the full incremental cost, then you get the max potential. You had business as usual if you did something else. But I would assume for limited income that the business as usual is pay full cost, and therefore I would expect the max potential to be the same. Does anybody understand that? I had an email queued up for Eli.
I can comment on that.
Thanks.
I can make a guess. So I think the question would be, I don't know if this is what you asked. The question would be, why does the max achievable not equal the economic?
No.
because the business as usual was constrained by budgets. So it's not really meant to be the same way an estimate of the sort of total opportunity. It was constrained by a budget. And I don't know what kind of budget constraints they applied for low income. I assume it's similar to the others. They just sort of existing budgets was my understanding. So that would explain why the BAU potential would be quite a bit lower. The question in my mind is, why would max achievable for low income not equal the economic potential?
I think they're just applying the cost effectiveness in the same way they do for market rate households.
Right. And so I think part of the question is what further discounting was done of the in order to go between the economic potential and the maximum achievable, because in the market rate, it's assumptions about uptake. I mean, as we know, uptake is not automatic. Even if you offer 100% of the cost, you don't get 100% uptake there either. So I think it certainly would be reasonable to have some kind of a factor. I don't know what they did on this, and I wouldn't assume it would be the same kind of factor as for the market rate, but
well, the cost effectiveness is based upon what the cost is for the program to pay for the upgrades compared to the benefit. And it's just that if the benefit isn't as high as the cost, then those higher efficiency measures wouldn't be done.
Yeah, but that's that's an economic test. We're talking about in terms of the achievable. We have the max achievable and the business as usual achievable, and they've only talked to me about adoption curves. I haven't heard from them about bounding the budgets. In fact, we don't have the budget numbers from them yet, how much these portfolios would cost, how much these things would cost.
Oh, well, that's the definition of the BAU scenario is status quo budgets.
But I don't, well, that's not what I haven't heard that in my discussion of their adoption curves. It was reasonable. They have these wrap. I guess I can forward you this adoption.
Yeah, but it is constrained by the budgets. That was very explicit deliberation of the work group, the stakeholder group, and we didn't all agree on that. But that's what they modeled in the end.
You've confirmed that. Do you know that?
Well, one of the utilities can speak up. That was the strong utility position, is that the business as usual case should be constrained to the existing budgets.
Okay, so when I talked to them about how they were deciding what goes into these different cases between the achievable, the max and BAU achievable and economics, I did not hear anything about budget constraints, and I'm a little skeptical. I'm scratching my head a little bit because I thought they were having trouble or trying to get us budget numbers for each case. And so if they constrained by budget, then why would they be having to go back and recalculate that?
That's a great question, and certainly for that scenario, I mean, you can open back up the latest that AEG sent around that described the scenarios, and they said this is final. This is how the scenarios are defined, and I'm confident that that's the case. If that's not the case, our understanding of that scenario would have to change, but that is very much my understanding of that scenario.
Okay, I have an email queued up for Eli. I'll ask him about that distinction.
All right. Anything else? Yeah, go ahead, Joe. Oh, no. All right, you're just muting yourself. Anybody else have any questions or comments for DHCD? I know you're just seeing all that information for the first time, or at least a short turnaround from yesterday. Fair to assume that folks would want a little time to digest it, and maybe we get into some more concrete recommendations or discussions next week.
Your Honor, that should work for us. Do you want to go back to the timing? Like if we have comments or recommendations that we're going to discuss next Thursday on DHCD goals, when is a reasonable time for us to circulate those?
I mean, the sooner the better. I mean,
Yeah.
Is Tuesday close of business too late? That would give everybody at least a full business day plus to digest them. Does that potentially work for you, Dylan?
That works for us.
Okay. Anybody else have huge heartburn about that?
I'm sorry, can you say it again?
Anybody have huge heartburn about having some comments or recommendations for DHCD by Tuesday close of business?
And the updated AEG worksheet is definitely going to be helpful for this, but it sounds like we're on track to get that tomorrow at the latest. So that's sort of presuming that is the case. We'll have time to review those numbers and share some comments or recommendations by Tuesday. Okay, good. All right, we'll aim for Tuesday close of business on the DHCD recommendations. And we were also going to talk about something else next week as well. Dylan, and I can't remember what you were talking about last week about having more comments. Oh, well, I don't know. We'll figure it out. All right. I can't remember either for if that helps. I think DHCD goals was the one that right. Maybe that's what it was. So yeah. Maybe I'm just trying to create fictional work for you. Okay.
Might have been just further thinking on the overall goal structure too, Chuck.
Right. Yeah. All right. Thanks, Dan. All right. So, all right, we can tackle that after, because I've got one more thing on my checklist to do today. So anything else before we let DHCD off the hook? But it'll be important for folks to come with not necessarily final, but something concrete, since DHCD seems like they're pretty open to setting a goal. All right. The last issue that I have today is the utilities, where they stood in terms of percentages and community resources. And I know they sent around something, I believe it was yesterday afternoon. Taylor, before I forget, there have been some folks that have had some issues with the firewall and getting documents, being able to open them. So if it's possible, if you could remember to, when you're saving a document, you can save it as like a .doc file. If you could save it as a .docx file, I think that would alleviate some of the firewall problems some folks have been having. So hopefully that is clear. If anybody has any questions, just let me know. But I got a question about that earlier today. All right, so Taylor or somebody from the utilities want to go over what you all circulated yesterday afternoon?
Yeah, this is Lori from Baltimore Gas and Electric. I'm having a little bit of bandwidth. I actually got kicked out before, so if it's okay, I'm not going to share the document. It's just got 3 statements. I think everybody has it.
Yep, that's fine, ma'am.
So, first off, I just want to say I am speaking on behalf of the joint utilities. And before I get into the details, I feel that I need to really start with a preamble of, this group has worked together for 15 years, coming up with some of the best programs in the country. We're award-winning programs. So I want to keep that in light. I know we're trying to move forward. There's a lot of questions about what's the best way to move forward. But I just want to compliment that this is a group that has, in spite of some of our differences along the way, really been able to pull together and have some really good programs. We're a leading state. We've won national awards. The utilities within Empower continues to win awards. We're sitting here now at a different crossroads, and that the state has really aggressive energy policy goals. And one of the things we want to make sure is that there's a level of flexibility that the utilities have to contribute to these goals. As our programs have been in the past, there's some concern along the way, but I think it's clear that no matter how we move forward, that our plans are going to be presented to stakeholders, and ultimately they'll have the opportunity to ask questions informally, formally through data requests. And of course, everything has to get approved by the commission. So just want to make sure, there's always questions about where are we going and what are you thinking? We don't know exactly what we're thinking 5 years out from now. I wish I knew what technology was out there and where we could be, but we're always as transparent as we possibly can be. So some of the numbers came out, and again, we don't have an absolute GHG number, so it's a little awkward to work on percents when you don't really know what you're working on, but we think we can support the minimum 80% target for GHG abatement. And this is similar to staff's recommendation. However, in addition to behind the meter resources, we think that number should also include front of the meter community energy resources. We view that potentially, again, we don't know where we're going, but we view that as having the potential to be an integral part of the kinds of programmings that we can provide to our customers to reduce greenhouse gas. I'm not saying that we're looking at solar right now, but that might be an example of a community solar program. So those are the kinds of things we're thinking of. They're energy related. They're not utility T&D related. So we think those are important. And while we don't support constraints on the community resources, we do agree that the other part of that, the 20% of the greenhouse gas abatement, should come from utility or could come from utility front of the meter or non-energy resources. And then that gives us a little flexibility to increase our GHG abatement while focusing primarily on those measures that really help our customers directly. We think that this mitigates, I think one of the concerns some of the other parties have is that there might be an over-reliance on our conservation voltage reduction type investments. So I think this would help mitigate that reducing all of those other non-community front of the meter opportunities to 20%. And the last thing is, we're really mindful that there's a cost that comes along with these aggressive statewide goals, the push for significant electrification to help improve air quality and reduce greenhouse gas. It comes at a huge cost, and we really need to focus on the impact of that to our customers' bills. And the joint utilities agree with the Maryland Energy Administration's recommendation that a contribution to this could come from front of the meter or community initiatives that are not funded by Empower. And again, they could come from those, they could come from other sources. So again, we don't know what we're gonna put forth, certainly not in the next 3-year cycle, let alone the cycle after that. But as I noted earlier, anything we do goes through the vetting process, they get filed, people have opportunities to comment on them, and those initiatives are always subject to commission approval. So that's the logic behind what we sent out yesterday.
Thank you, ma'am. And quick question for you. On the 80% that would be behind the meter and front of the meter community resources, do you have, and I know you looking into the future, do you have an idea of that 80%, how much could be made up by the front of the meter community resources, ma'am?
Really, we really haven't even put pen to paper on any of this. I think over time, and again, over time, if there's an opportunity to grow out things, I don't know, if you have a large, renewable installation that's, out there could be some potential, but we know we don't want to abandon our traditional type of energy efficiency measures that could help our customers save energy. We're not looking in any way to move away from that. but I would hate to throw a number out there, not knowing, again, what the future might bring for some of these community resources.
Understood. Thank you, ma'am. All right. Who's got questions for Laura? Okay, Joe.
Yeah, yeah, just a clarification. I'm still unclear how the potential study is going to feed into the goal level. And so I could see, for example, taking the efficiency and maybe DR component of the potential study, and then you've got your efficiency side, or your end use behind the meter side of things, and then adding making the goal 1.2 times that. Is that the intention, or what are we, how are you setting a goal? How are you basing the goal on this 80% ratio?
Ahead of me, but my assumption is that the goal is 100% and that it could be met by multiple ways. I think I see Dylan's hand up, and I think OPC may have a little bit of a different view.
I'm sorry, Laurie, what 100% of what?
My thought would be is that at least in the first 3 years, because we have such aggressive goals out there, that we would start with our goal to be 100% of. I would hate. I don't want to be committing to anything. So, but Lori thinks maybe.
So you're saying the 100% of the potential, and then 20% could be displaced by.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. These numbers are going to be significant, and we want to make sure that we can cost effectively support the state goals, and at the same time help our customers invest in efficient equipment, appropriate electrification, et cetera.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Dylan, then Nicole.
I'll let Nicole go first if she'd like.
Yeah, good afternoon. Oh, sorry. I apologize. Good afternoon, Nicole. Nicole Zeitner on behalf of OPC. Just to make sure that we understand, are you suggesting, Laurie, that what the GHG abatement potential study determines, that should be 100% of the utilities goal, even though it only looks at behind the meter measures?
Again, I think everything's open for conversation. So this is Lori only. We have not had an opportunity to really have a full utility conversation about that. But I would not want to, at least in the first 3-year cycle, overextend ourselves, because that comes at a learning curve and at a cost.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole. Dylan, any follow-up there, sir?
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. Thanks, Laurie, and some of the questions from Nicole and Joe got to some of my questions. I guess on the so the goal framework includes 3 numbers. I think it's 3 numbers, and you had this, Laurie, in that what you sent around, and you had 2 of those numbers, and so the goal framework also included X% from behind the meter. So I know you're not. I know you don't have a number that you're proposing. I guess do you think that the commission should not set that percentage at this time, or at any time, or so a change of the goal framework, or do you just not have a number that you're willing to sort of?
I think the question, and I think I don't have an answer yet, as opposed to anything else, is: are you trying to ask me, if we say 80% comes from behind the meter and community solar, how much of that behind the meter would come from energy efficiency? Is that your question?
How much of the total is from behind the meter? That is one of the numbers in the goal framework, and I'm trying to figure out if the utilities no longer think that should be part of the goal framework.
Okay, now I understand your question, and I personally at this point don't have an answer for that. Is that should X%? I think we need to look at what the numbers are to see if it makes sense to say of that 80%, X% is behind the meter and Y% is on the other side. Certainly we would look. At this point, the focus is more on behind the meter, because those are the measures and tools that are available right now. But again, going forward, I
Mhm.
think the biggest thing for me is going forward, how do we, you lock something in now and where are we going forward? So I think that's a conversation to be had rather than a line in the sand.
Okay, that's my second question, I think, is to that process. So I think that what I've heard from the utilities is, well, we won't know a lot of this stuff until we file our plans. And we don't know what community-based resources we might find. We don't know how big they are. So we'll know when we file our plans. And that's sort of the sort of general sense I'm getting. And so is it the utilities' position that the commission should not establish goals or goal boundaries prior to you filing your plans?
Again, the more flexibility to help meet the state goals, the better off we are. If there's concern, what I don't know is if there's concern that we're going to abandon our customers and what happens to our customers, we wouldn't. But I'm not sure. I guess I would, again, it's a conversation to be had. I don't know that, again, with the flexibility, I don't know that we have to have a line in the sand, but we can carry on. Rather than having a conversation now, I think it would be better to huddle up and have a conversation later. But at this point, again, we're looking for flexibility. A year and a half ago, or whenever these were discussed, the climate action plans and the really aggressive electrification had not come to be. So if you think through that, a lot of that is going to be on the customer side of the meter. So again, it's a strong force for the customer, but should there be a number, we can talk, that's something to be talked about.
Yeah, well, we did spend close to a year trying to come up with these framework. So I'm a little speechless. I've never been accused of fully being speechless, but the idea that we would not have any framework, I see Tunde's point about being flexible, and there's a difference between being a little flexible and having no goals or having no goal framework numbers and just saying, a lot of it should be behind the meter.
We haven't come to the point to know where we are, to know what would make sense. I mean, I can't throw out and 50% of that 80% or 90% of that 80% should come from the other side. So again, it's a continuing conversation.
Okay, well, it doesn't feel like we're at a point of consensus or likely to be at a point of consensus on this point anytime. That's my kind of reflection, and that's okay. We move forward with the process, but that's kind of my read on this based on these conversations.
It could be a Christmas miracle or a Festivus miracle. All right, Joe.
Yeah, I was just making sure. Lori, were you saying that y'all were going to file the front of the meter stuff as part of Empower program plans? And typically in the past, they've always, I don't think they've ever been included in Empower plans. They've always kind of come extraneously later.
Again, so now it's a technicality of how, I don't know if technicality is right word, operationally how we're going to file it. We want to make sure that if there's opportunities for community programs that are on the utility side of the meter that have greenhouse gas abatement, that the credit goes to the utility to achieve the greenhouse gas abatement goal that we're coming up with.
And so you would, so are you saying you would only include those front of the meter in the filed Empower program plans, or would there still be extraneous stuff that could come along later?
I'm not sure what you mean by
extraneous. Well, CVR was not part of any Empower plans that I recall. TND was not part of any plans, and they became large shares of the Empower goal. And so
became part of it before my time here, but it is my understanding that we were given the authority to include those.
Yeah, well, kind of after, well, yeah. But I still, my point is that I heard you saying, or I thought I heard you saying that you were going to be filing any front of the meter stuff, so everybody's informed. Everybody, it's all being approved as part of that. And then, but I don't think that's how it's happened in the past. So I'm just trying to get clarification. Maybe Dan can clarify here.
Yeah, thanks, Dan Hurley, Commission staff. I think to clarify, we're talking about 80% of the goal be through behind the meter and community programs and funded by Empower. So those front of the meter community programs, funded by Empower, are probably going to have to be somewhere in a plan, or at least, if not in the original plan, is going to have to be some kind of supplemental addendum later on, but it's still funded by Empower. So CVR is not funded by Empower. T&D transformers aren't funded by Empower. So I think that's a clear difference to what we decided to do as a group a year ago as far as the funded by Empower portion of this. And then there's a portion that cannot be funded by Empower that are kind of outside non-energy resources, or through other PC 44 work or whatever else there is. So I think what we had in the past and what's going forward is the key there is that these new front of the meter community programs that are as utilities bills will be some percentage of the 80% will be funded by Empower.
And well, that's not exactly the way our bullet reads, and it reads a minimum of 80%, not on mute, a minimum of 80% of the total greenhouse gas abatement goal from before, in front of and behind the meter behind the meter, in front of the meter community resources. They may include resources that are Empower funded, as well as those not funded by Empower, but approved by the commission, such as initiatives done under PC 44.
I think that's a little bit different than what we were thinking of. So
that was different than what staff wrote.
Yeah, I guess I misread that last night. So but
yeah,
at least the first bullet point from our agreement, was behind the meter, in front of the meter, funded by Empower should be X amount. So I think that's where we're still, staff at this point will still be kind of more of the minimum 80% from that resource, and then the 20% could come from the other resources.
Yeah, and for everyone's edification, I think Lori was reading from point 3 that was adopted by the commission. And that's on page 23 of the order. Looks like paragraph 55. Or I'm sorry, she was reading from paragraph 55. It's on page 24. All right. So are we just talking about
alignment? And again, we're kind of more in alignment with what the Maryland Energy Administration said, and they recognized that some of these reductions could come from front of the meter or community initiatives that are not funded by Empower. That there's a concern about the cost of this, as we're looking to put aggressive electrification and the opportunity to expense those kinds of things are massive, and that's a concern to us. And so, similar to what MEA said, to worry about the impact on the customer bills, some of these opportunities may be best treated through base rates.
anybody else? Go ahead, Laurie. Do you have something you want to add, ma'am?
I'm done, and I'm happy to be done if there's no more questions.
All right. Yeah, I'm not seeing Joe.
Well, I was just curious. I mean, if the goal becomes economical or too much of a burden, unbearable, the commission has the can always say, okay, we're letting that, we're making exceptions, or we're going to allow these other things. In fact, that's what's happened in the past. The goal was set. And I don't think it included, I don't think anybody was anticipating it was going to include front of the meter. And then that got rolled in there and the commission accepted it, just like it accepted the CVR EUL that Jim Gravatt has railed against. And so I guess I'm wondering, why is there expectation that that will never happen in the future, and therefore the utilities need these off ramps? And just curious, has the dynamics changed on that?
I think you're reading too much into it, or maybe you're not. I don't know. We just think that there might be opportunities that are best managed through base rates that directly help our customers and help us meet the state's aggressive goals and electrification goals. And the key issue is helping us to get there while managing our customer bills. And we want to make sure that when we make that suggestion, should we make that suggestion, and no utility at this point has committed to or not to, but should that come up, that people don't want to say, we've heard this the first time.
Okay, Lori, yeah, if I can get you to, Dylan had a question in the chat. It sounds like he just needs a clarification. Are the utilities proposing 80% behind the meter and community front of the meter funded by Empower?
No, the way
No.
it is 80% behind the meter or community resources. And now I have to find what we wrote, because otherwise I'm going to say it wrong.
It's okay.
That we want a single overarching GHG goal that's going to be established for the individual utilities to provide the flexibility design plans. I'll skip over all this other stuff. A minimum of 80% of the total greenhouse gas abatement goal will be from behind the meter and front of the meter community resources. They may include resources that are Empower funded, as well as those not funded by Empower, but approved by the commission, such as initiatives done under PC 44. So an example might be electric transportation, which some of the utilities already have in base rates. Don't quote me that that's going to happen, but that could be an example.
Okay. It seems, again, this is just me just kind of reading this off the fly, that the utilities are almost combining points 1 and 3 from the order.
I'd say that we were looking at
maybe with a slight twist. I'm sorry, I cut you off, ma'am. I'm sorry, Laurie, I cut you off. Can you say that again, please?
I'm agreeing that we're looking at those as a combined opportunity.
Okay, a combined opportunity. Okay, but it again, it seems to me that they're two different things. What the order adopted and what you're proposing. Is that just fair to say?
I view that, I view C as a subset of 1 as opposed to a total divergence.
Okay. All right. Shades of gray. All right. Anybody else have any comments, questions, concerns on the utilities proposal? Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
Thanks, Chuck. I would just a final comment. If let's say the commission approves this, theoretically approves this proposal, and I think we'd have to look at a much higher goal than if it was, an 80% Empower funded goal and then 20% outside. So, I think depending where we land on these things, it's really going to affect what size of the goal should be. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Edward.
Yeah, thanks, Judge. My apologies, I joined late, so if you already covered some of the procedural item, my apologies. But so when's the deadline for commenting on the utilities proposal?
All right. We have not gotten there yet, but okay. I'm thinking that it should be Tuesday, close of business. That way everyone would have a full business day plus to digest it and be ready to talk about it on Thursday, the 22nd.
Understood. Thanks.
All right. And is that doable for everyone? So if everyone's okay with it, we'll have the DHCD comments and comments on goal structure, both the utilities, and if you want to tweak whatever proposal you've already submitted, because I don't know if we're going to have time for, or if parties are interested in meeting in between Christmas and New Year's, or that first week of January. I can be available, but I'm not sure if we're going to have a critical mass to do so. But we can discuss that next week. So do those timelines work for everyone?
Your Honor, this is Dylan Voorhees again. I think we can file some brief comments. I don't think I'm spilling the beans to say we're not likely to agree with that proposal. So we can provide some brief explanation of that, but hopefully as we get sort of closer, sort of the turn of the new year, I believe your work group report is due the 15th. Is that right?
I believe it's the 13th, and that's a lucky Friday. So it's I have the 13th. I mean, based on the number of limited meetings we've had, and I haven't got a ton of comments, I can't imagine that the report will be extremely extensive in terms of length.
Yeah.
So I mean, I should be able to circulate it to everyone. I would hope, if depending on if we meet over the holidays or not. I mean, I would hope I could do it before New Year, so I want to have everyone would at least have one crack at it. But I get where you're coming from on the comments and from OPC's perspective.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Okay, so I will send out an invite for next week. We'll meet again at 10 o'clock on the 22nd. I've got a kind of a hard stop at 12, so if we need to carry over, I can come back on around, hopefully no later than 2, maybe a little bit earlier. So what I'll do is if we end up having to stop at noon, I'll send out another invite for the second part of the meeting. I'll look for everybody's comments on the 22nd, and we'll be looking at DHCD, some proposals, suggestions for them. And then on the goal structure, if you want to respond to the utilities proposal, what we've discussed here today, or tweak your own, that would be great. Remember, if you could put it in a .docx format to accommodate some firewall issues. Am I missing anything else? All right, and just as a reminder, everyone's potential study comments to the commission, not to the work group, are due on the 30th. So with that, I will bid you all adieu and enjoy the rest of your rainy Thursday. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, Chuck. All right,
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.